Thanks very much. Now, I caught up with the Business Secretary, Vince Cable, in his departmental offices in central London. When you were made aware of these figures yesterday, what do you think?
Well, I was disappointed. I mean, we know that the economy's got a lot of difficulties, and they're frequently rehearsed. We've got the problems of banks which don't work effectively. We've got a shortage of demand because of consumer debt. We've got trying to deal with our deficit, which of course affects consumer spending. We've got, above all, this very difficult situation in the Eurozone, which is affecting our exports. So it's not surprising that we're struggling with economic difficulties, but I think the scale of the downturn was disappointing, and we acknowledge that.
You say it's not surprising, but I mean, this is the very core of government policy. This is what you were about, trying to bear down on the deficit while increasing growth, and you're failing at both, and that's not surprising.
Well, they're not happening as rapidly as we would want. But I mean, just to put the other side of the case, I mean, there are some positive things happening. I mean, there is a lot of private sector job growth, 800,000 over the last 2 years. There are some very good industrial success stories. I was unable to refer to them this morning. The Jaguar Land Rover, the 1,100 new jobs on top of the 8,000 they've already done, what was happening with Hitachi and trains. There are a lot of very good things happening in the economy, but the overall growth picture is not good, and the figures show the reason why, predominantly because of weakness in construction.
Right, but I mean, if you take credit for some of the good news, presumably you have to take the blame for the bad news, and it is pretty appalling.
No, these are not good figures. No, there's no point denying they're not good figures, but it's easier to understand, I think, the deep factors which we're struggling against.
The IFS says that the figures are so bad you might need even more cuts in 2017. I mean, can you actually foresee going into the next general election saying we may need more cuts in 2017 to get on the course that we set for ourselves?
Well, we're taking the programme of cuts which we have to undertake in order to get the massive deficit down in a measured way. I mean, we've been flexible about this. I mean, the government's objective when we came into office was to try to deal with the structural deficit in 4 years. We've accepted in practice that it's 6 years in the November statement, and we're flexible in the speed with which this is being applied.
So there could be more cuts in 2017. It could be inevitable.
It could well be, and indeed the Prime Minister is talking about this whole process taking a decade, and that's a reflection of the massive scale of the problem we're dealing with.
But the economy is smaller now than when you became Business Secretary. You didn't presumably go into politics to preside over a shrinking economy or a lost decade for the British economy.
No, I didn't go into government to preside over a shrinking economy, but I did go into government to help deal with an absolutely massive economic problem. And this is something we haven't experienced in our lifetime, which are the consequences of a banking collapse, a coincidence of the enormous, possibly existential crisis in the Eurozone affecting our economy, and dealing with a massive deficit problem. These are not easy conditions, and I take it as a challenge to be part of the team that's dealing with it.
I don't think anybody would underestimate the challenge that would face any government with these problems. But as you know, Conservatives say we need more deregulation, we need more cuts, and people on the left, including some within your own party, would like to see more investment, more public spending, and inevitably more borrowing. I mean, you're wobbling between the two. That's really the problem.
No, not wobbling, I'm quite clear. I don't think the issue is predominantly a problem caused by lack of deregulation or lack of further cuts. I don't buy that kind of what's sometimes in jargon called the supply side agenda. We have to deregulate, of course, where regulation is excessive. I don't think that's the problem. We have very flexible labour markets in this country, actually. It's one of the main attractions for the big inward investments that we've succeeded in attracting here. The problem is a basic problem of demand. And this is, of course, made more difficult by the fact that the government, and any government trying to deal with a deficit, of course, adds to that problem. So we try to offset it by very, very active, vigorous policy by the Bank of England. The Bank of England has been very supportive. It was during the crisis under the last government. It continues to be here, and that is an essential part of the mix.
But could you, given that analysis, couldn't you do what the IMF is suggesting you have room to do now? You could use your low borrowing costs to spend more on infrastructure growth to help the economy through boosting precisely the construction sector, which you put your finger on as being one of the problem areas.
Well, the government is actually doing both of those things. I mean, the infrastructure initiative launched last week is an attempt to give the government's balance sheet, which is strengthened by the reflecting low interest rates in government borrowing, using the government's balance sheet to support big infrastructure projects financed with pension funds and the rest. So we're
But
doing
would you like
that.
to do more of
and
that? That's the
directly,
point.
and
You've got room to do more
directly
of that.
using low interest rates to keep interest rates lower for bank borrowers under the National Loan Guarantee Scheme. So those ideas are already being implemented.
But
and
you
it
could
may
do
well,
more.
it may well be that we shall have to do more.
Because your analysis in February, in a letter that was published, suggested, you said, I sense, however, that there is still something important missing, a compelling vision of where the country is heading. Many people agreed with your analysis. I take it you still agree with your analysis. Lack of a vision.
No, actually, I think what we're putting in place, I mean, I was referring to one particular aspect of policy, which is what we call industrial strategy. And I think what's happened over the last few months is we've got the building blocks in place and are accepted. And essentially what that means is getting the government behind things like apprenticeships, innovation, supporting supply chains, above all supporting a resurgence of manufacturing, which we're really beginning to see, working in a cooperative long-term way with, say, the automobile industry, aerospace, life sciences, and services like creative industries. That structure is being put in place, is producing results. And I wrote the letter because I have responsibility for driving that agenda.
Is George Osborne the man who's killed off the recovery?
No, it's not a personal thing. He's a colleague. We work to
He's
a
in
common.
charge.
We work to a no. We're collectively responsible. We've got a common agenda. We work actually well as a team. So there's no personal blame attached to it.
But he called today's figures disappointing. Some people, including your good friend Lord Oakeshott, thinks he's disappointing. He said the Chancellor is on work experience and suggests that he could be replaced by someone with much more experience. Meaning you.
Well, Lord Oakeshott is a good friend, but I don't agree with him on everything, and this is one area where I don't agree with him.
Well, you don't agree that you'd make a good Chancellor?
I probably would, but George Osborne's doing the job. We're doing it together, well, as part of a team, and nobody's suggesting that we change the arrangements.
But Matthew Oakeshott is still your friend, let's put it that way.
Yes, a long-standing, goes back decades.
Even though his judgment on this issue might be somewhat suspect.
we can have friendly disagreements, as we do on this issue.
Vince Kibble, thank you very much.
Thank you.